All right, well, good evening and welcome to our return to our lecture series here at the Arts Center. I'm so honored and pleased to be presenting Mr. Jason Thurston, who is Outreach Coordinator at the International Paper John Dillon Park, which is up between Long Lake and Tupper Lake, totally accessible park. And also, Mr. Thurston is on a number of different boards that deal with accessibility in the Adirondacks and throughout New York State. He's working with the New York State Department NISDEC on their advisory committee, and also a whole number of other. I'll let you list all of the organizations that you work with.
They're adding up.
Yeah, they're adding up, which is great. The other great thing is Jason has agreed to be part of our building committee here at the Arts Center. Obviously, we are in need of improving our accessibility here at the Arts Center, as are so many other facilities around the Adirondacks and elsewhere. So we are so happy that Jason is joining us in that effort to be improving that aspect of what we do here and making our Arts Center more accessible to everyone. And so I will at this point, let Jason take over. Welcome.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much. I grew up in Vermont. Let's see, we'll just start from the beginning. There we go. I grew up in Waterbury, Vermont, in land that was 5 generations in the Thurston family. My backyard was 350 acres. Wow, it had been subdivided and broken up into several houses, but there was lots of woods to explore, and very often in the summertime it would be like in the old days where mom says go out and play and come back for supper, and you go explore wherever with your neighbor, my neighbors, and my cousins lived right next door, so spent a lot of time outside. A friend, my neighbor and I used to go hike up a stream and fish for brook trout. It was miles away from the house, and we'd go way up into the woods. And my father was always very patient with me as far as answering any questions, especially when I was younger, the inquisitive, why, daddy, why, that kind of thing. But was very much grounded in the ecosystem and the fragile nature of it, but also our role as stewards, hunting and fishing to preserve, make sure you don't take all the fish out or shoot all the deer, but at the same time be able to harvest and keep the ecosystem in balance. He went to Paul Smith. He was a forestry survey student for a couple of years. The trigonometry got him, unfortunately, but he picked up the forestry bug and was always identifying the trees, and we burned wood, so we would go back in the woods and cut wood. He was always pointing out what the trees were and stuff. So very grounded and loved the outdoors. I was a Boy Scout. That also helped to keep me in understanding of the natural world, camping, and the loyalty and our responsibility. And then I found a job in a restaurant. It was the eve of my 14th birthday, a month before I was 13 years old. Found myself washing dishes in a restaurant right down the road, and just absolutely embraced everything that was a restaurant. It was 1987, and everybody I worked with was in their mid-20s, and they were just a great crowd to look up to, jokingly, and also finding their way. But, you know, the more I did, the more I was respected, and the more they taught me. So, and, you know, I started peeling potatoes and cracking eggs, and before you know it, peeling shrimp and making salad dressings. And we were open for dinner, but we did Sunday brunch. And the chef I worked with, he liked to party. So to sum it up, he wasn't a morning person, but he lived right above the restaurant. And the more he taught me to do, as far as prep for brunch, the later he could sleep. And I used to do as much as he taught me to do to get ready, bake muffins and popovers, and you know, crack eggs and cut up garnishes and stuff like that. And as soon as I was to the point where I couldn't do any more, I'd go out in the bar with a broom and bang on the ceiling to wake him up. Yeah, and so I followed the chef. That restaurant, it was next to the Coal Hauler Cider Mill, owned by Eric Chittenden, and the restaurant was Governor Tom's, named after the first governor of Vermont. But he had the cider mill, which was a much bigger business, and the liability laws in the bars was getting a little bit tough, and he was nervous. You know, he had a pretty active bar scene, so he didn't want to take that risk anymore and closed down. He gave us a 2-week notice, which was an interesting 2 weeks because we didn't, you know, there was no consequences. So I got to witness that too. You've heard of short time emergencies, right? You give your 2-week notice, and then you have that 2 weeks where you're just kind of in limbo, and you know, what are you going to do, fire me, kind of thing. So that always stuck with me, in the sense that nothing is permanent, especially in the restaurant business. So I followed him to the next restaurant he went to in Stowe, and you know, of course, the more he taught me, the more I could do. Did a program through school. We didn't have a vocational program at the school I went to, so we had this whole work program where you get graded and stuff like that. And that restaurant was bought by these brothers from Massachusetts, Bob and Dick, Richard, Robert and Richard Collins. And they bought it, fixed it up, and by the time they had it fixed up and running good, they sold it. So I had to go to the next restaurant that he also went to, which was good, because he would come in, you know, and say, I got this guy that can wash this and prep, and dishwashers and prep guys, you can't always count on them. You know, there's a lot of, especially dishwashers, that start for a couple of days or maybe a week and decide it's not any fun. So I loved restaurants, and when it came time to go to college, I was looking around for a restaurant or a cooking school. And at that time, there was about 4 to choose from. It wasn't like today with the Food Network and all the glamour that comes with being a chef. That was not a thing then. And as a matter of fact, the people I worked with used to pick on me. They'd say, what are you going to school for? You know, we went to the school of hard knocks, that kind of thing. But I wanted to learn more about running a restaurant. And as a matter of fact, Paul Smith's, the program when I first started was called Chef Training. And the idea was that you learn everything from the top down, you know, from managing the books to the menus, to ordering the food, to marketing, to personnel management. And so that appealed to me, of course, along with the fact that it's in the woods. Culinary Institute of America was a little bit expensive and kind of intimidating, to be honest. And Johnson & Wales had a program, but that was in Providence, Rhode Island, which I didn't really care to be in a city. I never was much for a city guy. So Paul Smith's was perfect. And so I started in the fall of 1991 and really took to it. I wasn't much of a high school student. Average, did what I did to get by. Didn't plan on going to any prestigious college or any, you know, stuff like that. But when I went to college, I was all in. You know, I had the restaurant bug at 6 years in, and just loved it. You know, so much passion, and wanted to learn about it. But the summer of 1992, summer of 1992, it was the first summer that they had culinary students. They had a program of culinary students, and there was only 8 of us on campus, for the whole campus. There was another handful that were off-campus students. But the second, we had blocked classes, so if it was normally an hour class, we had 2 hours, and it was 7 weeks for one set, and then 7 weeks for the other classes. And the second half, we only had 3 classes, so we convinced them to block it off for Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Thursday afternoon, when we were out of our last class, we would go to the cafeteria because we were on the meal plan. We already paid for the food, right? So they would hook us up with food, and we'd get some coolers and maybe a few adult beverages that, we were under 21. So, but you understand, the Red Dot Trail is right across from the college, and it's got a whole bunch of lean-tos and I don't know, a whole bunch of 6 or 8, and so we would grab our food and go out to these lean-tos and just enjoy the woods, and campfires, and I used to love running the trails at night. That was one of my favorite in a full moon. Not the safest thing, but a lot of fun. Anyway, so yeah, and then we would have to return. We would return on Monday night and be ready for Tuesday night class. So that's when I really fell in love with the lean-to culture. And then I went on to, after I graduated, I settled right down in Saranac Lake and got a job in Lake Placid. I went, up and down Main Street, in every restaurant I could find, and with my resumes, and the best deal I could get. I landed at the Hilton in Lake Placid because they guaranteed 40 hours year-round, which is in the seasonal business, as I'm sure you all know, is not so easy to find because, your rent stays the same, but if you get laid off or your hours get cut, it's kind of hard to. But anyway, so that was great, and then after a year of that, I decided I was going to work for a year and then get my week's paid vacation, because that was the only real perk. And then I wanted more, so I went back to the guy who ran the culinary program, Paul Sorgel. I don't know if you've ever heard that name before, but he ran the culinary program for Paul Smith College, and I had a good rapport with him, and went back to get advice on, I wanted more. I wanted to learn more, do more. He gave me a whole bunch of addresses to restaurants in like Napa Valley and all over, the places that were really up and coming at that time, and I was ready to go, but I had a girlfriend who didn't want to go, so that's, and then I met a girl, right? I'm not going to go too much into that, but he found an opportunity at the Point. I don't know if you know anything about that, the old Rockefeller Stadium. At that time, it was the cheapest room was $675, and the boathouse was $1,000 a night, and that was all inclusive. This is 1994 money, so it was real serious, and it was all Europeans in the kitchen who were trained in London, at the same place that Gordon Ramsay was trained. And yeah, so I was the breakfast cook, and I was the only American in the kitchen, and I was the only one that wasn't part of, their thing. And I had come from Hilton, which was fairly laid back, and they were not. And I learned pretty quickly the discipline of that whole other world. And again, I took the responsibilities of as much as I could. The breakfast was pretty fancy. Everything was homemade. Everybody, whatever they wanted, because it was all inclusive. Did a lot of egg white omelets. Truffle egg white omelets were pretty popular back then. But we would have a standard tray of warmed muffins and quick breads, and homemade bread and toast and homemade jam. That would be I think they called it a normal. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what the word for it was, but most people got that, and they would be asked in the evening what they wanted for breakfast. So I would know if I had people that were coming into the Great Hall to actually sit down and have a formal breakfast, which was great. So so I learned all that, and then that was the summer that they opened the Lake Placid Lodge, and they offered me opportunity to live there and breakfast cook. So that was pretty exciting. But that got a little bit too intense. The guy who was the chef that was overseeing the program was pretty strict and was kind of a bully. I was the only American in the kitchen again, so I was the one that got picked on the most. That didn't really appeal to me. And to be honest, I really didn't. I didn't take to their way of doing things. I could have, if I'd stuck with it, had the opportunity to go to Europe and be able to, be one of those. But I really loved the original restaurants that I worked in. They had the single owner, and everybody knew everybody, and it wasn't too much pressure. But at the same time, you could serve a good, honest meal. So I built a resume. I went from there and ended up working in a corporate cafeteria up in Chazy, and ran that for the Sodexo company. I don't know if that name resonates at all, but it's a French company. They are actually the largest food service corporation in the world. But they do education, colleges, and then corporate. This was a pharmaceutical research facility, actually, that I worked in. And they were just picking up military contracts, so they were buying up all of these different cafeteria style things. So I got a taste of that world. But again, I was much more in love with the single owner. So by 2003, I worked part-time at this restaurant called Charcoal Pit in Lake Placid. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that or not, but it was built by a Greek family that were one of the first to settle in Lake Placid. They started with a diner on Main Street in like 1940 or something, and it all stayed in the family, and Mama was still around, even when I was there in 2003. So I took the chef's job there. Like I said, I worked part-time for there, and his name's evading me right now on the spot, right? Anyways, so I was looking for a new job, and I again went and spread resumes everywhere. It was when the smokehouse in Tupper Lake, I forget what it was at the time, but I applied there. I applied several places in Lake Placid again. I was really looking for a deal, but it came down to one day I was on my way to the dump in Lake Placid, and I had my dog with me, and I went and I sat in the truck with the owner. He was, I don't know, whatever he was doing, and I said, "You got a chef for this season?" This was in April or May when you start looking for a job, and he said, "Well, I don't want George to come back." And I was thinking, he was kind of taking advantage of the place, and he said, "Can you make soup?" Because a soup salad was always included with every meal, and I had always worked in saute stations, and it was kind of a benign question. It's one of those, "Can you make soup?" And I said, "Yeah, I can make soup." He said, "Well, what are you looking for money?" And I had been making $600 a week, I think, at the time. And I said, "I want salary," because again, my mortgage is still the same, and my wife at the time was selling real estate, so that wasn't very dependable income. I mean, it was coming in, but you couldn't always count on it. And houses never close on time, between lawyers and banks and whatever. So I settled that deal, and that's where I worked as a chef. The first year I worked 6 nights a week, so from Memorial Day right through Labor Day, 6 nights a week, and I was the only chef. I didn't have a prep cook. And somebody that came in and worked the grill for me, and we would serve up to 250 dinners a night, sometimes on the weekends. And I peeled every carrot and washed every baked potato, and we did as much from scratch as we could, and really just loved it because I had I had one boss, and I knew everybody, and I had a lot of pride in my work. And then opportunity came up for a chef instructor at Paul Smith College, which was kind of the trajectory I was on. I worked in many different facets and learned a lot about it. And it was ultimately one of my dream jobs, because that summer when I was on campus, I ran into one of the professors. I said, "What's your favorite part about being a teacher here?" He said 3 things: June, July, and August. So I really liked that idea, and by this time I had 2 children. One was 13 and the other was 4. So I really wanted to be home more. Working nights all the time and weekends, and all summer I didn't get to see my kids a lot, or get a lot of time to spend outdoors, which fishing was my major passion. And I used to throw a minnow trap. You can't do this anymore, but I used to throw a minnow trap in the stream behind the charcoal pit, and I'd catch my minnows, and I'd have Mondays off, so Sunday I'd come in, throw the minnow trap in when I got there, and then at the end of the night go down and get my minnows and put them in the bucket. And then I also have a small stream on the side of my property, and I dug out a spot so I could put the bucket in there and have live minnows all the time. And I lived not very far from Franklin Falls in Bloomingdale, so I could be on the water in like 10 minutes. I was pretty happy about that. At one point in time, just to backtrack a little bit, I lived on Moon Lake. We rented a house there for $350 a month, right on the water. We had $1 million view. It was so sweet. It was right in this bay. We had a walkout basement. The guy left his canoe for me. It was just, it's awesome. I digress. So I got the opportunity for fishing really easy, and by that year, when I had negotiated in 2004, I said, what do you want for a raise or whatever? I said, I just want 2 nights off a week. Give me 2 nights off a week. So I had 2 nights off a week, and so fast forward to let me just show you a couple pictures. I wasn't able to dig up any pictures back in those days without we had to develop everything. We took pictures at birthdays and weddings, and that was it. Christmas. But I did find this gem that my aunt took. That was the Hotel Saranac. We had an internship back then at Paul Smith College, and that was the buffet night. Everybody had a rotation where you did your own buffet with a theme, and you worked for a week, 2 weeks on that. And you picked out of the students that were there. You picked who you wanted to work in the kitchen with you, or you wanted to wait tables or whatever. So that was my night. We had a Hawaiian theme, and that was one of my buffet partners, Tetsuye Abe. He was an exchange student from Japan. So that fit right in with our Hawaiian theme, right? There's a lot of influence from the Pacific Islands stuff too. And the first 100 people got lays, and that was fun. And like I said, I couldn't find any pictures of me in the restaurant, but why is this not there we go. I did find this gem. This is me, guess what, Thanksgiving. Big smile. Anytime there was any kind of holiday or event or group thing, I was always in the kitchen. Even if I wasn't running the show, that was just my place. I just loved it so much. And then on August 2nd, 2004, I had just come from the college. I was talking to Human Resources about my benefit package for my chef instructor job. And I had an appointment at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I did that, and I was having a party. I hadn't hosted a lot of parties at my house, but I was ready to. I had some friends from the college that I hadn't seen in a couple of years, and they brought their kids, and my other friends, we had, I don't know, 15 people there or so, and had it all set up, and I had an above ground pool. I came home from my appointment and mowed my entire lawn. I had over an acre of lawn in one shot, which I had never done. I used to just mow the section, so I was real proud of myself for that. There was a cooler of ice cold beer, which beer never tastes better than after mowing the lawn. So being excited and having a party, and so the kids were playing in the pool, and I would run around the corner, jump in and go under and pull their legs, or my 13-year-old son liked to flip, so I'd flip him. There were maybe 6 kids in the pool, my friend's kids, and so after about the 3rd time that this happened, I went to dive in and hit my head on the bottom, and was instantly paralyzed and drowned. It felt like a lightning bolt shot through my body, and that's all I remember. I don't remember anything except that I was in this warm place, like the most, I don't know, it was like the perfect blue sky, and just like the best hug you ever had, and I remember pictures like flashing through, like my wife and my kids and my parents, and I really felt like I was given a choice, and I had more to do. So I woke up after 7 hours of surgery. They got me 8 centimeters in the back and 7 centimeters in the front to repair my 5th and 6th vertebrae. Used them together with scrapings from my hip. They actually took bone from my iliac crest, they call it. Scraped that to patch it together with some titanium plates and screws. And when I woke up after surgery, which is literally the last, earthly thing I remember, I could move. The only thing I could move was my bicep. And of course, I was intubated and on a lot of drugs. And I'll never forget that there was a nurse sitting next to me. I was in ICU, and his name was Kyle, and he was the one that had to explain to me what happened, because I didn't know. So there I was in ICU, and like I said, I felt like I had a choice. I felt that warm embrace. I know that when my time comes, that's going to be there again. So I'm not afraid to go whenever my time happens to be. But like I said, I had more to do. So in ICU, I had a collapsed lung, pneumonia. Because I was paralyzed, I'm paralyzed from the chest down. My injury, the spinal cord was injured at 5 and 6, which that's where the level is. The higher up, the less function you have. So the lower down you go, and there's 7 cervical vertebrae in your neck, and then it goes to thoracic. So people that have injury on their thoracic, they're paraplegic because they have use of their arms. And then as you go up, there's your ability lessens the function that you have. And there's complete and incomplete spinal cord injuries. Complete spinal cord injuries are where the level is cut. You know what I mean? It's solid. It's to the letter as far as the signals that go from your brain to the rest of your body. Obviously, the signal comes from your brain to move your parts, and it goes back up to with sensation, whatever you feel. So I'm pretty lucky because I'm incomplete. Beyond here, I have been able to develop some trunk muscles. But when I was in ICU, I had the double pneumonia, and like I said, at first I could only move my bicep, and but because I was given a choice and I knew that was what was waiting for me, I was really cheerful, which the people in ICU just could not understand that. They're like, this guy just broke his neck, he's got to be in denial. Of course, I was on some heavy drugs, which, I didn't mind that. But I would laugh and tell jokes and stuff, and I always wanted to be a therapist. I had some psychological challenges when I was in my 20s that landed me inpatient. But I always was able to talk and listen to people. I kind of had that knack that my father did, where if somebody's in crisis, that you can, or not even, just be able to open up naturally. So that's the way I was with the nurses. I had a nurse to myself, 7 to 7, 12 hours. 12 hours on, 12 hours, morning and night. And so I would find myself getting to know them and whatever their situation was. And I remember specifically there was this one nurse, she was the one that took me outside for the first time, which was amazing because I couldn't even sit up, I was flat. That was it. And talking to her about, she had a challenge, her in-laws were coming or whatever, and she was intimidated. I was like, it's your house, But because I had the collapsed lung, and I can't really cough because I don't have the chest muscles to do that, So that's about all I can get. And so with pneumonia, my lungs were full. That's how that works. And so they would come in, the respiratory therapist would come in every 4 hours and put this vibrating thing on my chest. They use it for people with, not fibromyalgia, what is it?
Cystic fibrosis.
Cystic fibrosis, that's it, thank you. And so they put this vibrating vest on me, and the respiratory therapists were really cool. I don't know what it was. Every single one of them was real down. I wanted to go to their Christmas party, let's just put it that way. But they come in and they put that vibrating vest on me. And like I said, I was into telling jokes and stuff. And I don't know if you ever heard Robin Williams that does a thing, one of his early things where it was, he was imitating Elmer Fudd singing Bruce Springsteen's Fire. Yeah, you know this one?
Yes.
No, maybe not.
Yeah.
So I would sing that when the vibrating vest was on me, and so it'd be like, I'm driving in my car, I turn on the radio, I pull you closer, it just happened, which is great. Or Ragtime Gal, like, hello, my baby, hello, and so I would do the whole bit and crack them up, which lightens the mood when you're dealing with somebody that's in a situation such as mine. So I spent 2 weeks in ICU, and the deal was I had to have 1 night in a regular hospital bed before I could go to rehabilitation. And normally, because I was a New York resident, they would send me to Sunnyview, which is down near Albany. But because all my family was in Vermont, I went to Fanning Allen, which is the UVM Fletcher Allen big hospital. That's their rehab. And the top floor was brain injury, and the bottom floor was physical. Usually people with knees and hips and stuff like that need to rehab before they can go home. And being a spinal cord injury, I was actually, they hadn't had anybody like in my range. They had people with less function and more function, but nobody like right in that middle ground. So it was kind of a learning curve for them. At one point in time, had 3 different physical therapists working with me to help me with my routine. When you have a spinal cord injury, it affects not just your muscles and your sensation, but also your bowel and bladders. So we'd have to do. I had a catheter that was indwelling, and then had to learn how to self-cast, they call it, and intermittent. That was interesting. And then the bowel routine, if I can be frank, every morning would start with a suppository that of course the nurses had to administer, and wait and hope, and because the function isn't there, you have to start that process. So that was the start of my day, and then I would go to physical therapy for 2 hours every morning, and they started with basically sitting up. So I'm sitting on the edge of a mat, and I got my hands down, and there's one physical therapist behind me and one in front of me. And the first day was like 2 seconds that I could hold before I felt backwards. The next day was like 5 seconds, and the next day was like 7 seconds. So this is the pace I'm at, and it really kind of hit home that it's a long road, but this is my new job, and I always prided myself in my work ethic. So let's get to work, and so after 2 weeks, I think it was up to 1 minute, which was just woo, But that's every day, 2 hours a day, trying to just simply sit up. And then I would have occupational therapy in the afternoon, which at first was just like resistance bands. This is the main function that I have. That's where it ends. I have deltoids, shoulders, biceps are full, and wrist extensors, and that's what I use to move myself around, to pull things, because my hands, I'm not able to move my fingers independently at all. One of the things they did was they put a brace on me, and I actually slept with it, because naturally, when you move your hand, if you flex your wrist, your finger and your thumb come together. Which, I mean, I have about enough grip to maybe hold a piece of paper. That's about it. So that's what they did. The resistance bands for occupational therapy, and they built the brace for me. And so that was kind of slow going. But fast forward another month or so, and they had me in the what they call a mock kitchen, where it's, they got a refrigerator and a counter and cupboards and a little table where you practice cooking, right? So I really, up until that point, I had been just fiercely positive, I mean, going through the catheter thing and the bowel routine and the slow going of the thing. I had a lot of support from my family. I have 4 cousins on my mother's side that all live in Vermont, and they took turns each night coming to visit me, which really made a world of difference. I had one cousin that would come on Monday, one that would come on Wednesday, that my cousin Darren that would come on Wednesday would always bring me takeout from some restaurant in Burlington or whatever. And my cousin Drina would come on Thursday nights, and she didn't get out of the house much. She had 2 kids, and it was just crazy busy all the time. So for her to come in and sit and have that quiet time away, it was really good, and we bonded a lot. My cousin Denise would come on Fridays. She would bring sweets. She was a really good baker, so she would bring cookies or whatever. Anyways, back to the mock kitchen. So I was supposed to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. So you get the bread, open it, pick up the slices of bread, put them on the plate, and then they had the little cups of peanut butter and jelly, right? by that time I had figured out how to use my teeth to open those. Yeah, it was on my birthday that I decided that I wasn't going to let anybody feed me anymore. From the time of my accident up until September 15th, somebody had to feed me. And I really didn't like the taste of that hand sanitizer, you know, because they'd have like rolls or whatever. Even if they used a fork, they'd get that. Their hands would come close to my nose. And people that would come visit me would feed me, which was kind of cool. I had some employees that used to work for me in Shazy, these women that I worked with, and they would feed me, or my mother would come in. But anyways, again, back to the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I keep going back. So I make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I put it together. I'm proud of myself. You know, it took me 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I don't know, a while. But I finally had this peanut butter, and she hands me a small French thing, and I couldn't even hold it, and I lost it. I completely melted, sobbed. There was so much that I used to be able to do with the chef thing, you know, making soup. I flash back to, you know, I don't know, 2 months prior to that, I just used to put vegetables in my apron. I put carrots and onions and celery, you know, the primary ingredients for soup. And first thing I did, take my coat off and go get this apron full of stuff and be able to take that chef knife and turn that onions and carrots and celery in a matter of 20 minutes into full dice in the pot, sizzling. And so there I was, and I couldn't even hold it. And that was a moment. that was a tough moment. But rehab, I was actually there. I was there for 3 months. Ended up getting an extension in October. My exit date was November 23rd, and the occupational therapist came to me and she said, "Now we need to have somebody come in and train to help take care of you." Because I needed a lift to get in and out of bed. I mean, I explained the bowel routine, you know, be able to get on the commode. You know, the whole gamut of, you know, throughout the day, what I needed help with. She said, "We need somebody that's going to come in and train for 2 weeks. You know, they'll come for the day for the first week, and then the second week they're going to stay with you, and they're going to stay overnight. And who can you get to do that?" And my wife at the time was not up for it. She was having a hard time with me being paralyzed and not, just everything that changes with a family. You know, she occupied herself with renovation on the house. We had a lot of support from the community. I'll get into that after. But so who's going to take care of you? Who's going to be there for you every day? You know, 24 hours a day, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, to help you set up to catheterize yourself, to help you get food, to help you transfer from the bed to the commode, to help you, I mean, all these things. And I couldn't think of anybody. And unfortunately, what happens to people that don't have anybody to do that, they end up in a nursing home. And I didn't want to go to a nursing home. I mean, I'd had my house for, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. We'd done a ton of stuff to it already. And the renovation project was going on. And I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. My mother at the time was living in South Carolina. She had been recently divorced and was struggling. She worked at CarMax. I don't know if you ever heard of CarMax or not. My mother's not much of a salesperson. And at CarMax, you actually have to pay them to be there. But I don't know, it wasn't much. It was pretty negligible. It was like 25 bucks a day. And then, of course, if you sold something, you got a big commission. but she wasn't pushy and she was too honest to be a used car salesman, right? So I called her and to see if she could do this. She lived in South Carolina, you know, and she'd been down there for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. But she said I was laying in bed, looking up at the ceiling. I was down to my last $20. Didn't know what I was going to do. I said, God, give me some direction. Tell me what to do. And the phone rang, and it was me. And I said, Mom, I need this. She sold everything that wouldn't fit in her car and drove it. And she came and she worked with me in rehab, and they built a whole other room on my house for her. My father paid for it. My parents have been divorced since I was 17. My father paid for the extra room for my mother to live. Yeah, the community support thing, that was huge. The story went out to the Press Republican, the Plattsburgh paper, and you know, just about me being chef and being paralyzed and having to make renovations to my house, you know, ramps, and I needed a roll-in shower. I was lucky enough to get a chair that I could push myself and that would roll right over the toilet, so I didn't have to worry about transferring or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And then I could wheel it right into the shower. But we had to, you know, there's no money for, there's no insurance that covers all this stuff. You know, I qualified for Medicaid, so all my medical bills were paid for, thank God. But as far as renovations to your house, that's up to you, you know. But I had that hit the paper, and I got a flood of letters and cards, and you know, from complete strangers from all over the North Country. Some people $5, some $50 check, you know, sometimes $100 check. It was amazing. The people that I used to work with up in Chazy, they took up a collection. They raised, I don't know, like $800. My mother's old boss in Vermont, she hit him up and he said, "I'll buy something. Tell me what you need." And I needed a big ramp in the main part of my house. She said, "Well, you want to buy the ramp? It's $600. He said, "Okay, $600. And the restaurant I worked in, the Charcoal Pit, they had a benefit dinner. They raised $7,000 in one night. Yeah, and oh my God, the community came together. It was something. All the food was donated. The purveyors, I knew you know, I'd been a chef. There was one chef that I knew that from almost every place I worked, because he worked for Kraft, U.S. Foods, and he came to visit me in rehab, and he said he had never seen that parking lot so full. Jimmy Hodges, that's his name, that owned the Charcoal Pit. His wife Francine, she went up and down Main Street, Lake Placid, into every shop, and of course the family been around forever, so they knew her, and got all kinds of stuff for a silent auction. And then of course all the staff all donated their stuff, and Paul Smith sent rolls and desserts. And I knew the head of the bakery program. I actually took a culinary class with him in the summertime. So I knew, you know, really good guy. He showed up with 2 students, and they served all the desserts and the rolls. And yeah, so that was where a big chunk of the money came from. So the community support thing, it just blew my mind, and so anything I can do to give back is part of what I am and my mission. Fast forward to 2006, a year after I came home, and the Tri-Lake Center for Independent Living don't know if you guys know anything about independent living centers, but independent living centers help any person with a disability of any age with just about anything. We were new. I started out actually as a board member, and we were considered a satellite of the Plattsburgh Independent Living Center, but we were formed in collaboration between the Messina Independent Living Center and the Plattsburgh one, because we were covering the Tri-Lakes, right? Saranac Lake, Lake Placid, Dublin. So I was on the board. We actually went through a board training, which was really cool, and developed our own mission statement and our own bylaws and stuff, which was great and an eye opener. I found myself in a position where I was going to have to live alone. The person that was living with me at the time, I need to tell another story. I came home from rehab in November 23rd, and like I said, my wife was having a hard time with it. She did organize the modifications really well. As far as we had volunteers and family members and whatever, and then we had to pay people and stuff. But she really struggled with it. They had set up in my room, I had a hospital bed, of course, and they needed to be able to walk around it because my legs and stuff needed to be stretched every day and to be able to, dress and stuff. But she had a really hard time, and I had a hard time, and she had a hard time, to not be able to be the man that I was for her. And one of the things her mother told her, she said, "You're just not built like that." So I had a bad day. I made some really bad decisions. I still had some painkillers, 5 milligram oxycodone, which I really only took when I needed. I really had weaned off that. I was up to, 20 milligrams every 6 hours when I was in rehab, which was crazy. But that day that I decided I wanted a divorce, and I started calling divorce lawyers, and then I started taking pain pills. And we had this guy that was living with us, just happened to be the guy that saved my life, gave me CPR, and then was helping out around the house, doing the things that I used to do for, bringing the wood, fixing stuff, all those many things. And he was there, and my wife was at work, and I had him pouring me mugs of whiskey at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And so I would go to my room and take some oxycodone, go back in, have him pour me some more whiskey, and I'd call a few divorce lawyers, and I got on the phone with a close friend of ours and started going off about how I was done. I was finished, I couldn't take it anymore. And I ended up in the psych ward eventually. That I blacked out after some more bad choices, and woke up in the hospital in Saranac Lake, where they basically stabilized me and made sure I was not overdose. The first thing the doctor said to me was, my doctor comes in and he says, "So when there's a divorce, the kids stay in the house and the wife gets the kids." So, and I'm thinking to myself, I just had the equivalent of total nervous meltdown, and you're telling me about my wife's going to get the house and kids? Needless to say, that was the last time I talked to him. But I ended up going to the psych ward in Plattsburgh, which I really obviously needed to be. But one of the most challenging parts of that was having to explain to these psych nurses who had no idea how to take care of somebody with spinal cord injury, how to dress me and transfer me and stretch me and put a suppository in. And the thing that really cracked me up with the catheters, they locked up my clean catheters. And when I needed one, I had to ring for them. And of course, you can't have a regular call bell because it has a cord. So I had a bell. So when I had to pee, I had to ring this bell. And then they had to come in this locked cabinet that had the catheters in it to get me a catheter. I don't know how the heck I would have done something with a catheter. I can't tie them together, you know. But the thing that blew my mind was the wastebasket was full of dirty ones. Right there, you know. But they locked up the clean ones. Anyhow, so they didn't know where I could, I couldn't go home. In order to qualify with the county to get home health aides, because I did have home health aides that would come in every morning, 7 to 3, and help in the afternoon. So, but in order to be part of that county program, I had to have a primary caregiver. And of course, my wife was not going to be my primary caregiver. And once again, I'm in this situation where I need somebody to help me. I don't know who's going to help me. And they wouldn't let me leave the psych ward unless I had a place to go. There's a nursing home in Plattsburgh that has rehab. Obviously, they have physical therapy and stuff like that. I don't want to go there. A friend of mine stepped forward and she said, my husband and I, they were living down in Lake Landing. My husband and I will rent out our house and we'll go to you. And while that was going on, I was stuck in the psych ward. And I got mistaken for staff by the second or third week. Yeah, and really took to helping other people like that. Like I said, okay, so Tri-Lake Center for Independent Living. My friend's living with me. I get on the board. She, after a year, is going to leave. I'm up against the county because, once again, you can't stay in your home unless you're a primary caregiver. At that time, I wasn't able to independently get out of bed, so that was a major safety concern. The nurses that would come in and help me with certain things, one of the nurses came in and he said, you know, we're not going to be able to help you if you don't have somebody living with you. Which is kind of ironic, right? I mean, but so the county showed up with their people to do all about it, but I also had people. I had a good friend of mine that lived in town, and my neighbor lived down the street, and my father even came over from Vermont, and basically told them, you know, if I have a phone, I got a friend that's 10 minutes away, you know. And then the Tri-Lake Center for Independent Living stepped in and brought up this lawsuit thing, the bill that was passed, and it basically stated that people had the right to live in the most integrated setting. And so they showed up with their 3 people, and I had, you know, my friends and my father, and the county showed up with their people, and basically said, you could do this. So I qualified for 8 hours of aid time a day. And simultaneously, I got hired at the Independent Living Center. But I only spent one night alone because the person that I got for my backup, I actually fell in love with her and she moved in. So I had somebody living with me and I had a job, like all of a sudden after all that. So at the Independent Living Center, within a couple of months I went to the National Conference for Independent Living, and that's in Washington, D.C., where all people from all over the country come with all types of disabilities, and they have workshops, and they have, you know, big lectures, and then of course, you know, fun time and mingle time, and really opened my eyes to the world of people with disabilities and advocacy and, you know, independence and supporting each other and just all those things, which was just awesome. Um, so that was really set me on a course. We were new, so we didn't have a whole lot of consumers. They actually put us in Raybrook in between Saranac Lake and Lake Placid, which is, I could never figure that out because people couldn't really get to us. But anyways, one of our first objectives was the tourism accessibility project. It was something that we came up with when I was a board member. We were like, how do we get our name out there? You know, I said, well, I'm a tourist. I said, why don't we work on accessible tourism? So we'll start with restaurants, and all the restaurants in Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, and Tupper Lake, and rate them for parking, entrance, and bathrooms. And we actually did that, but nothing happened with this stuff. My first talk was to the Chamber of Commerce, Saranac Lake Chamber of Commerce, and it was all about the Tourism Accessibility Project. That was kind of exciting. So the 4 core services of Independent Living Center is peer mentor is the top one, advocacy, and that comes in 2 parts: is individual advocacy and systems advocacy. One of the things we did in Washington, D.C. was we went to our respective Congress people and discussed bills that were on the docket that concerned people with disabilities and pushed for those. I was in Chuck Schumer's office. It was kind of exciting. And Hillary's, actually, at the time. Advocacy, independent living skills training, people that need help figuring out how to do stuff in their house, you know, different hacks and different ways about becoming more independent. And yeah, so mentor, advocacy, independent living skills training, and well, I'll think of it. But I also did outreach. That was you know, obviously we got to get our name out there. So I put together a presentation that outlined all these things that we offer, and went around to actually 10 different locations. Went to the high rise and the nursing home and the tail end of that. I was really pushing for people to try and transition from a nursing home back into the community. There was a bill on the docket at that time called Money Follows the Person. And it was all about the concept that spending all this money to put somebody in a nursing home with a much poorer quality of life than if they lived in their own home, and costing more than it would to keep people in their own homes and provide home health aides and people to come and check on them and develop a community around that. So that was a big thing, and I ended up, there were 2 people that were at the nursing home in Lake Placid that I was trying to help get out. And that was really rewarding. One of them did go home, the other one unfortunately did not. But anyways, that was like the secret behind my outreach. That was like the drum roll please at the end. It was just like, anybody you know, I'm gonna fight with them, you know. And then benefits advisement, that was a huge thing. Social Security, I took a class on Social Security as far as applying and appeals, and then helping them get back to work after the fact. Okay, so that was that. So I found my purpose in. How are we doing for time?
8:05.
Oh my God, am I boring you?
Not at all.
This is what I'm talking about, level of injury. I know you probably can't see all the words, but the cervical from the top, and then the thoracic, and then lumbar, leg muscles, and then even sacral will affect the valve pattern. Sacral. Want to end the show? And there's our sticker, accessible Adirondacks. So in 2007, I developed a pressure sore on my ischial, the butt bone. By the time it was discovered by a nurse, it was just a black spot on the outside. It started from the inside out. And I went to a wound care, and they did debridement, where they put a piece of gauze in there basically to drain it out. But after a couple of weeks or maybe even a month, it went septic. And I actually had a doctor's appointment that day, and they took my temperature, and it was 105. They were like, "We need to get this guy a room right away." So they sent me into the emergency surgery where they did a surgical debridement, and the doctor discovered that it was a baseball-sized mass of necrotic tissue. Yeah. And I ended up with what they call a wound vac, which is basically a tube that they put in there to suck out the drainage. It's got to have a tight seal, and it makes a lot of weird noises. So that really was a pain in the ass, to be frank. But I continued to work with the wound vac. I was determined to work and sit on it, which was not the right thing to do. It's not going to heal if I'm sitting on it. So after a year and a half, I ended up going for what they call flap surgery, where they I got cut from the, almost all the way to my knee, all the way up, and then it's a plastic surgeon that folded over and sewed it together. And then I had to spend 2 months not sitting up, completely laying down for everything. Everything. I could not sit up for 2 months. I went to the doctors on a stretcher all the way to Burlington back. I had to have my girlfriend help me with my bowels, not to mention, everything else. And to go from being as independent as I had become, helping people and going around and stuff like that, it really hit me kind of hard. But I basically crawled into the TV. That's what I say. I reserved myself to just, well, this is it, this is it. And I had to, of course, lay on my side as much as possible. But after that, I managed to decide to go online and get my bachelor's degree in human services. And so that was interesting. And again, it was to learn. It was to learn how to help people. And because I already had credits from Paul Smith's, and online school was kind of primitive at that time, but weekly 10-page essays, different kind of things like that. But I really embraced it and got my degree in 2014, I think. In the process of that, I was taking a class called Not-for-Profit Fundraising, and I developed a mock organization called Adirondack Wheelchair Adventures. And a good friend of mine that I worked with in Charlton, the chef, had finally started to get me out, mostly fishing, but got me out in this boat, figured out how to transfer me, and ice fishing. He built an ice shanty for me that I could, custom, because we used to build ice shanties together, and we used to ice fish all the time. But water skis on the bottom of it, the door acted as a ramp, and strapped me in and towed me across the lake. Sometimes at speeds of upwards of 50 miles an hour, which was great. I loved it. I was like, I don't get many thrills, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like bouncing around. And one time, I slid out of my chair and was like on the floor of the thing, like right in front of it. So when my friend opened the thing, I was like right there, and he was, really concerned. I was just laughing. I was this is so much fun. So finally getting outside, and a friend of mine took me to, I wanted to show her the Red Knot Trail from the summer of '92, right, the lean-tos that I went to. And I tried to get back in there and didn't get very far. Narrow trail, roots, rocks, the whole thing. And I asked her to, just go in and take a picture with me. But that was like a call for me to do more. sensibility for the outdoors. So this is some of the things that I did to get out. It's my son and I, that was a boat on Lake Placid, and then ice fishing, that's the ice shanty in the background, and then the boat, the John boat. First trip to John Dillon Park in 2015. I went for the day and hiked around the trails and fell in love with it, but could not figure out for the life of me how I would ever possibly be able to camp. I mean, between the fact that I had a hospital bed to sit me up and an over the bed table with all my stuff on it, and how am I gonna, all those things. But I made reservations and ended up going in 2016, and I had a couple of friends of mine that were avid campers and will do anything to make it work, so they made it work. So I went in 2016, and then I went again in 2017, and in 2018 I went twice. The first because my son was going for basic training, so the second trip that I went on, my van wouldn't start, so I ended up taking my manual wheelchair, forgot my meds, just had a horrible time. I wasn't used to the manual chair. I was having a hard time pushing myself around, and I was like, I need to get involved. I want to be part of this. So I asked the director. I started writing some stuff for him, and my first board meeting, they reported that they had 7% participation with people with disabilities, and I was like, this ain't right. Like, this place has been open for so long. And I looked around at the board members, and a lot of them were older, which is no big deal. There was one guy in a wheelchair, but I was like, nobody here is connected to the park. You know what I mean? And I didn't see anybody with a disability background. So I had the background of the Independent Living Center and the Adirondack Wheelchair Adventures, for Christ's sake, right? So at the same time, coincides, I finally was able to live alone. I had figured everything out. I figured out how to wash dishes and cook and load my wood stove and everything. So I was alone for the first time. And it was great. I could do whatever I wanted. There was nobody to worry about. I could get up when I wanted, go to bed when I wanted, the whole deal, which was great. And so having the board meeting, and then being alone, it's like I need to figure out how to get more people with disabilities involved. So I came up with a Happy Camper Initiative. Happy Camper Initiative. What do you want, right? We don't feel religious. We want happy campers. So how do you get happy? What is a happy camper? A happy camper is somebody that knows what to expect, has a good time, and comes back and tells all their friends. And so I built this whole presentation around that and the difference between experience and ability. So recognizing that certain people have experience in the outside and certain people have different abilities, and you take those together and then you come up with a range of needs. And then the idea of going where they go, going to different places where people with disabilities are, and promoting the park, and so on. I went to the board meeting in the spring and gave my presentation and got a standing ovation, and they hired me. And at first I was a consultant, and then on August 2nd, 2019, 15 years to the day that I was there in Human Resources, I was at Human Resources again as an employee of Boston College. Yeah, that was great. So unfortunately, I didn't put any pictures from John Dillon Park except for these. But this is, you measure time by your kids, right? This is my son Fox, and that was the first time we went in 2015, and then again when we went in 2018. So, after I'd been, that's how we measure that. So, from virus to opportunity, 2020 to 2021. Bringing forces together. I decided that we decided to close the park for the summer. there was a lot of different repair projects that we needed to do, running chainsaws all day, repairing a lot of the boardwalks and stuff like that. And we were like, we don't know what this COVID thing's going to do, we're just going to shut down. And I decided to bring together, I invited a couple of different happy campers that I've met through correspondence and did 3 trips. The first one was with 3 nights with one of them, and then the other one. And then the third time, I brought together Stephanie Woodward and Ryan Chalmers, the 2 in the front, and then the 2 in the back are the DEC, the ADA coordinators for DEC. And that's Carol on the left and Leah on the right. Now Carol had been there for a long time. She was on the board. She was a big part of getting Downhill Park together. She did a lot of things to promote accessibility. And Leah was new. She'd only been there for like 6 months. And we got together and Carol had this whole formula to evaluate the trails. So we actually measured the slope of all the trails, and that's what we did for the day. And I had Stephanie bring an extra wheelchair, and Leah, the new ADA coordinator for DTC, pushed that wheelchair around the park all day long. And I thought, what a great way to get the perspective, So yeah, Stephanie's a lawyer and activist. One of her claims to fame was being dragged out of Judge Schumer's office. But anyways, been arrested several times, been in jail for protesting, like really hardcore. And Ryan is a Paralympian. When we were on that trip, we were sitting around after Stephanie went to bed, because she usually dominates the conversation, he's real quiet, but after a few drinks with a friend of mine, he comes out with, yeah, this one time I pushed my wheelchair across the country from Central Park to the Staples Center. And my friend said, how long did it take? And he said, 2 weeks. And so, yeah, hardcore guy. He also is, he coaches the wheelchair track and field team in Rochester. So, these things led to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. Leah invited me in to be on that, and it had been kind of dormant. And there were still some members that were there in the beginning in 20 years prior, in like 2001 or 2 when it got started. And so we kind of fired it up again. We got some more people, some of Stephanie's friends, and I volunteered to be chairman. And so we started in October, and we've done quite a few things to stir the pot, so to speak, and advocate for people with disabilities within the DEC. We requested a meeting with the commissioner this year, which was great. I mean, he only gave us half an hour, but we made the most of it with the commissioner and some of his deputies. And then also met the new Kim Hill. She's the disability coordinator. Chief Disability Officer. She reports directly to the governor. The governor created this position specifically to have a person that's going to advocate and get New York State higher up on the list in accessibility and employment and transportation, because we were like number 20, and she's like, we should be number 1. So she appointed this woman, Kim Hill, who has tons of experience. So we got her on her side. More recently, we're up against the APA. It was CP3 miles. It was a whole thing about accessibility and rights and the balance between environmental protection and accessibility. Don't cut any trees. Well, we might have to cut a couple trees. Don't pull up the roots. Well, we might have to pull up the roots. You know what I mean? Don't move rock. Well, so there's that balance. And of course, I love the outdoors and have the utmost respect for the ecosystem and all that stuff. So I don't want to disturb any more than I have to, but I'm there to advocate to get more people out in the woods. That also led to being on the New York Trails Commission as a disability representative. Just yesterday I was on the FPAC meeting, the Forest Preserve Action Committee, again representing people with disabilities, and also the Rails to Trails, the thing that's going on from, if you're local, you know all about that one. So yeah, so it's led to all kinds of great things, and we're not slowing down. And also, what came out of this is Outdoor Accessibility Day. We decided last year, I said, we should, we're at John Dillon Park, let's set it up. We're going to have a cooking station, a fishing station, a nature walk. We had different representatives from different organizations. The DEC sent a bunch of people. We had like 75 people there. Really great. It was, yeah. Anyways, that was a good one. That was last summer. These are the things that 2020 led to, right? I mean, the Accessibility Advisory Committee led to the Outdoor Day. Yeah. Okay. And Empower Her. I cannot say enough about this wonderful organization that Stephanie Woodward started. When we were there in 2020, it was just a vision of hers. And it started with, she went to Puerto Rico when they had the big storm there and realized that people with disabilities did not have any disaster preparedness training, nor were they considered when it came to rescuing. I mean, along with everybody else, but their needs were not specifically considered. So she set out to educate people on that. But she also decided she would start this organization that helped young women with all kinds of disabilities between the ages of 14 and 17, high school age, and pair them up with mentors, successful people with disabilities, women, all women, Empower Her, right? And so they come to the camp for a week, and these girls came from all over the country. None of them met each other, and they throw them into the situation. A lot of these kids had been away from their home, their parents who coddled them, and Stephanie was not having any of that. She said, first of all, don't say I'm sorry unless you really mean it, because that's like a trigger, for people a lot of times. I'm sorry. No, you can't say that. And I'm not going to help you with anything unless you ask me, And so it forced them to really advocate for themselves and toughen up, and they got to know each other, and I mean, it's just amazing. And so these girls that are in this picture are going to Washington, D.C. next week to, again, go to their respective Congress people and advocate for disability rights. And this year, third week in August, we're going to have a whole new batch of girls. And she has raised a ton of money, and she's appointed some of the mentors that were there last year to be coordinators, and it's just I can't even begin to tell you how great that is for John Dillon Park. And then we had a visit from Corey Lee. Curb Free with Corey Lee is the name of his blog. His blog has won several Webbies. I don't know, Webbies or Emmys are for the web, for travel blog. Not disability travel blog across the board. This kid set out to see all 7 continents by his 30th birthday, and he did. He set foot on everyone except for Antarctica, of course, because that's a little challenge. But he did go for a cruise in Antarctica right before his 30th birthday and right before COVID. But anyways, this guy's all over. I'm following him on social media. He's going to Disney World, he's going to Minnesota, and he's going to all the corners of the United States right now. But he has been to Africa and India, and he's amazing. He's just amazing. He's got a marketing degree from Georgia Tech, one of those Georgia universities. That's where he's from. And he told me this story after I showed this in real quick. After he got his degree, he flew to Philadelphia to interview for a job, and he said he rolled into the office, and the guy took one look at him and he said, "I don't think you're right for this job because it involves travel." And if there's anything that's going to motivate a person with a disability, it's telling them they can't do something. Don't tell me I can't do it. So he came to visit us, and he had a great time. We stayed for 6 hours. I cooked them lunch to demonstrate how easy it is to cook over the fire, which was great. And we explored the trails, and I showed him all the amenities and so on and so forth. And he had a great time. And he did a whole Adirondack circuit, and he blogged about. Yeah, that was his favorite. And as a matter of fact, this is the heading of the whole Adirondack guide that he put together for accessibility. And then I landed myself on the cover of the Adirondack Explorer. Yeah, this woman, Jillian Scott, she had contacted Leah from the DEC and then interviewed me in the winter of 2021, and then came to visit me. She came to visit me in July and stayed for the day, and the photographer that was with her stayed even longer. But I was with my friend Joe, Joe was my Sherpa, right? He always went with me, and we were on our third trip, and it was only July, and I had like all kinds of other trips planned, and he's like, I don't know, man, I don't know if I can do this. And Jillian turned to Joe, and she said, so what exactly do you do to help Jason? And he thought for a minute, and he goes, nothing he can't do himself. So that following week, I came, and we were planning to do the Outdoor Accessibility Day. Leah was going to be there, and I know, I'm sorry, it's getting late, isn't it? I said, that's it. I booked my trip, and I went by myself for the first time, and last year I went 10 times for a total of 25 nights, and 4 of those trips were entirely by myself. Yeah. So what's in store for this year? I broke my arm a month ago, this bone right here, and so I haven't been able to transfer because I have to push down. My son lives with me now, and he actually lifts me in and out of bed for the time being because I'm not allowed to weight bear. I'm on the cusp of being able to finally do it, but I've had to cancel 6 trips to the park, which is killing me. Anyways, so new goals for the Accessibility Advisory Committee we set out in the beginning, and I suggested that we do a 3-pronged approach, which is make more awareness about places that are accessible, help the DEC advocate for things that are already in the works, and find places that are not accessible that we want to be accessible and advocate for them. So that's going on. Oh, and I already talked about the commissioner and Kim Hill. Oh, we had a webinar series not very long ago from this woman who's been doing outdoor accessibility advocacy for, I don't know, 23 years, 30 years. And she talked about like what is a wheelchair, and then what's allowed on the trails is the definition of a wheelchair. And this is kind of a gray area, but it's any chair that can go indoors is safe for the trails, but if it can't go indoors, it's not safe for the trails. So like your track chairs, and they make these beefy 4-wheel drive wheelchairs and all this other stuff, so those aren't allowed on the trails. Power-driven mobility devices. So anyways, she did a whole webinar, and it's actually still online. New focus for John Dillon Park. One of my focuses is local outreach. Ta-da! Here we are. And we had a guy offer, actually he already sent a check for $30,000 for shower. Yeah, so fundraising is now on my list to do, and we need some improvements at the park, so I've been working on that. And I am dedicated for life for accessibility in the Adirondacks.
I was hoping you would get to the ton of money that you are able to generate. How you generate it, where is it coming from?
Money?
And, yes, the money, you know.
For what?
For your ventures.
Oh. Well, John Dillon Park is funded through an endowment through International Paper. It runs off the interest. The budget is around $75,000 a year.
Okay.
I haven't really, I'm just starting to work on fundraising.
I see. Because that's a biggie.
Yeah, we have some capital improvements that definitely need to be done. too.
That's it.
Yeah, well, it's been, opened in 2006, and some of the boardwalks and stuff haven't ever been replaced, and there's just, maintenance.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're very welcome.
Just got a long drive.
Yes, I'm sorry if I ran too late.
It was great.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
have a great night. Any other questions?
Money, money, money.
Come on, William, what do you got for me?
Money, money, money.
Money, 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 yeah,
How
money,
to get it?
how to get it. That's my new goal. Yes,
You
sir.
said initially you had a 7% figure as far as the number of people.
Oh, yeah.
Where are you now?
Upwards of 60.
Whoa. Okay. What's the total, and the total number of people that are coming through the park is?
Well, we have 9 lean-tos and a tent site, and we're about 90% booked all the way through the first week of September.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, there's only a few scattered weekdays left right now.
Are there similar parks in other states that are noteworthy in terms of accessibility?
What makes John Dillon Park unique is the lean-tos. And every site, the lean-tos?
Oh, lean-tos.
Yes.
Oh,
Every site has a lean-to with a ramp that you can reel up into. They have sleeping platforms. Some of them are fixed and they can bring in others. The fire pits are accessible, which they're 9 inches off the ground. You can, they gotta be,
Swing.
yeah, swing-away grill, yeah, that's it, and it's a double wall situation, so you can get down there to build a fire and tend it, and then to cook is great, because, you wheel it out, put your stuff on, and swing back over.
But are there other places in the, is this a
None
unique
with, not with a
place?
lean-to.
Oh, okay.
There are places that that have cabins. John Dillon Park is completely free, so I haven't found anything that offers any kind of shelter. So beyond that, you're looking at tents. So a tent site, but they have accessible tent sites in almost all the DEC campgrounds. There's a spot on there where you can find accessible features, because nobody's abilities are the same. What's accessible for one is not accessible for the other, and vice versa with the facilities. There's different amenities
So it's
that
kind of,
are accessible or not. So the key is to know what to expect. You know what I mean? So as long as it's outlined, and the big thing with that, and with any kind of accessibility rating, it really kind of needs to be vetted by somebody that knows the difference. Because you can say it's accessible, you can read a manual and whatever, but if somebody in a wheelchair or people that I like to say disability adjacent, friends or family of people with disabilities, friends of mine and family of mine, they're constantly looking for ramps and where the bathroom is and stuff like that. Did that? I'm sorry. That was kind of expanded a little further on the question.
that's great, okay. Thank you very much.
Jason, you had mentioned to me that, well, you talked about improvements that you need at John Dillon Park. and
Yes.
That's including getting back in to where it is. Because you said, for example, your vehicle is not an off-road, the van, the St. Joseph van is not an off-road vehicle, right? So that road needs to be.
Oh, it is. No, the road's in much better shape. It's had its moments.
Oh,
We had a lot of big rocks that stuck up, and it's common for an accessible wheelchair van to have a lowered floor, so therefore they have less ground clearance,
Right.
and the road in had some rocks that were sticking up. They're working on it. The road's one of the things, and the other thing is our composting toilets are kind of outdated, and we're working on that as well. It's a big one. Yeah, we had a board meeting today, actually, with John Dillon, and he was talking about the same thing, because he's still kicking it, 78, I think.
Do you have a budget that you try and match revenue to?
Match in what sense?
Well, do you have a budget that you try to develop each year and then fund it?
Well, the funding comes straight off the interest from the endowment,
I see.
and then there's the budget itself. That basically pays for the people and equipment.
So it's International Paper
Yes,
is the endowing agency.
yes. And the board consists of people from International Paper, people from Postmas College, and people from the DEC, because that's what helps build it. But the history's really interesting because they chose the site before they decided to make it accessible, which is why it's so far out, and I love it so much, because if they were going to build an accessible place, they would have put it a lot closer to the road, and it would have been less remote and less wilderness.
Oh, it's on lake too, this
Yes, Grampus Lake, yep. And they didn't, and they cut very minimum, as little as possible.
Are there amenities for visually impaired folks?
Well, I mean, the fact that the trails are level and 6 feet wide. We have a member of our board who's visually impaired, and she gets around really well. I mean, compared to, you know, a trail, like I said before, roots and rocks and unpredictable stuff like that. It's definitely something we always try and consider. We do have a tactical map. I don't know if you, it's basically a map of the park that's got raised, you know, raised spot where everything is, and the trail and stuff like that, and a key that goes to it. That was put together by a collection student. Every year we have a collection student that comes in and does a project, their capstone project for their bachelor's degree. That's another thing for me.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you
All
guys
right,
so much.
thank you very much.